Welcome to the Elevated Trader Podcast. I am Dr. Kristen Kidgel.
And I am Tracy Ball. Join us every week as we journey into becoming better traders.
We believe becoming better traders involves elevating our skill, mindset, and our health. In each episode, we will discuss the current book we are exploring, and we invite you to join us on this journey.
Are you ready to elevate your trading, mindset, and health to the next level? Let's do this.
So welcome back, everyone, to the Elevated Trader Podcast. My name is Tracy. I am again joined with my amazing co-host, Dr. Kristen Kidgel, and we are here concluding the Peak Minds book by Amishi Jha, and we have a special guest for you, the person that introduced us to this book, Deanna Franca. How are you, Deanna?
I'm doing great. Thank you for having me.
That's good.
Yeah, thank you for telling us about this book. We loved it.
When I started following the two of you on the other podcast, I thought I have the perfect book. So I'm glad that it was something that came across.
Well, why don't you introduce yourself a little bit? Tell us who you are, where you're from, that kind of stuff, and we'll get started.
Yeah, elevator pitch. I was born in Brazil, raised in the US, and now I reside in Italy. I have been trading since 2020, and it kind of just stars aligned. I have a degrees in economics and international studies, was doing nothing related to that. I was actually pursuing a passion. I started a company called DeFranca Designs, where I was a self-taught artisan. So I designed and handmade leather bags. And in my venture of moving to Italy, I found out that being an entrepreneur in this country is almost impossible. So I had given myself a year to make it work. And as that year came to a close, COVID came into a start. Yeah, I had just recently gotten back from visiting my dad in Brazil. And my dad, I remember listening to some of his stories that he traded back in the 80s, where you literally had to be, looking your own information up and creating your own graphs and your own indicators. And he recently had kind of gotten back into it. And in this trip, he kind of planted a little seed of just curiosity. So when I got back home to Italy and decided to pursue something else in a country that there's very limited opportunities, I fell upon trading, I guess. Was very lucky that I found a real life trading. I see the merch, Kristen, at the beginning, and stumbled upon you, Tracy, which you have just been the best blessing. We've done some one-on-one mentoring, which has been life-changing with the volume profile. And this book, if anyone has ever traded, actually put their money in front of a graph and watched price go up and down, I think you fully understand how trading just challenges everything you think you are. And it's just... So with trading, I started down this self-development path because you must be at your best in order to be able to be profitable in trading. So back to the Peak Mind book, I was driving, listening to a Brené Brown podcast. I am a Brené Brown all the way fan. And the Dr. Amishi, yes.
Amishi Jha, yeah, okay.
So I was listening to this Brené Brown podcast interview, and she was interviewing the author of Peak Mind. And I remember listening, she said, "You don't help a friend move a heavy couch, dropping down and giving 100 push-ups, hoping to get strong right before moving that couch. But yet, whenever we need mental fortitude, we do the equivalent of dropping down and doing the push-ups." And being an athlete most of my life, I thought, that sounds really cool. Like I want to do push-ups for my mind. So I got really excited, and the interview was really interesting because she talks about your attention being a kind of a flashlight. And I used to always think you could multitask. And the first thing that she tells you is there's no such thing as multitasking. So
I know, puts the brakes on it.
Yeah.
Like, oh, come on, this can't be true.
Exactly. So I got super excited about this book, read it, thought it was super helpful. the breakdown of the science of how it is that we react the way we do to situations, and the cognitive processes that happen is great. And for trading, I think it ties right in where you're just challenged under stress all the time. And if you don't know how to manage that and have the neuroplasticity, then you're just going to go on a really bad roller coaster ride.
Absolutely. How long ago did you read it?
I read it at the end of 2022.
Ooh, so she's got some time ahead of us. Good
Yeah.
reflection, because we're like newbies with it. And from my point of view, the amount of research that she diligently put into it and her time and efforts was really what seals the deal for me, because without that, you're just doing something that somebody else has tried and says is a good idea. And so for me to take time in my day, because time is precious for all of us, right? Because we're busy, because we're attempting not to multitask all the time. But that I put the effort and my time into doing this, thinking and hoping, and we can only know because of off of what she's told us, is that every time we do it, we're improving ourselves.
Mm-hmm.
So I find it, I don't find it difficult, but I would say that I thought it was difficult because the mind wanders and you constantly bring it back. But then she gave me permission to not be mad at myself. With the mind wanders, it's going to wander. It's okay. The push up is bringing it back.
Yeah.
It's just so good to make that switch, right? Like mentally, it's like, oh, thanks. I don't have to be so hard on myself anymore.
Right. And I entirely agree with you that the science explanation just sold it for me. If I may be blunt, I don't think the actual meditations are the strongest part of this book. I had been meditating for a while, so it felt a little bit elementary. I can see how it would be a great introduction to someone who's never done it. And I used components of it in my own meditation to kind of reel that in, because like you said, it's not about turning your mind off. It's about bringing it back in, noticing. It's noticing what your mind is doing and bringing it back in. And as far as not having time to do it, it's kind of a catch-22, because one of her quotes says, "You cannot simply decide to pay attention better." And I feel like in all aspects of our lives, we spend so much time and effort to develop ourselves physically, at a job, any skills that you really want. I'm currently training for a half marathon. I'm not just going to show up one day at the race and say, I'm going to run 21 kilometers. Yet, with our cognitive resilience, we just, as we're going through a crisis, we say, no, we're going to buckle down, and we're going to pay attention, and we're not going to be stressed, and we're not going to be anxious. But we don't put any time and effort in actually developing that skill in our brain.
Agree.
Yeah. I also, because the whole part about lifting the couch and stopping right then to try and get the skills in order to be able to do that, I to be honest with you, I've had a very stressful last several weeks for a multitude of reasons that I'm not going to get into right now. But I'm on borrowed time as far as sleep is concerned. A lot of the habits that I have had to be put on the back burner because there's been some interruptions. And I'm finding that there's the things that I need the most are the things that I'm actually dropping very quickly. Ooh. They're the ones that go on the sidelines, right? So it's really important. I mean, I think that if I didn't have some of the skill set that I've already established leading up to this point, I'd be a basket case at this point. And I recognize that, and I know that. So I can attest to the strength or the power or the resilience of the stuff that we have been doing throughout this podcast, Kristen, since we started, and developing all of these skills, because I am relying on them right now. Even though I'm not currently in training mode, I'm currently relying on the skill sets, the muscles that has developed for me, so that I can stay focused and I can stay here and now in the present moment, instead of focusing on things that might be wanting to pull me away because of those stressors. As she talks about in the book, a lot of those things will pull you away because there's issues. You're thinking about the past, you're thinking about the future, you're thinking about everything else but the now. And I don't want to miss the now. So,
And it's the stories you're
definitely have
telling
noticed that.
yourself by emotionally reacting to that stress. Another quote that she essentially, I'm going to paraphrase, she says, drop the stories that no longer serve you. So
Yeah.
when you try,
That takes presence and awareness.
yeah,
Oh, yeah.
Which is one of the things that is like a repetitive thing in all these books that we read is be present with your thoughts. You know, what are the stories you're telling yourself? Be aware of what you're thinking and saying, and have that person, you know, have the accountability where Tracy and I call each other out. Don't talk like that. Don't talk about my friend like that. You don't mean to say those words. You know, it's funny. One of the things that she does a quote of somebody else in the book that I am going to obviously paraphrase and slightly butcher a little bit, but it's like somebody said, if you cannot find, 15 minutes to meditate, you need 3 hours.
yeah,
You need the day. And
Yeah.
I actually laughed pretty hard at that quote because, and then I really appreciated the fact that like it's 12 minutes of refocusing, of refocusing, of refocusing. And it's 12 minutes of while you're doing stuff like brushing your teeth, driving your car. I find myself not even able to get to 12 minutes. And I have a 20 something, 25-minute drive to work. And I've tried it a couple times. And it's just like, as soon as I get pulled out, that's the hardest time. I can refocus in quiet really fast. It's like, wow. But in the middle of stuff, it's much harder.
So, Deanna, you said something to me that I wanted to kind of react to as well. And that was that you're a seasoned meditator, and you found that the meditations in this book were elementary or simplistic, basically. And I totally understand that, totally get it. And I can say that I have tried being a meditator for years and years and years and years and years. Tried it. No one could explain it to me in a way that made sense. No one could explain it in a way that made me successful at doing it. Because I wouldn't know what the end goal. How do I know if I'm doing this right? What am I supposed to be doing? It wasn't until I read this book that it clicked and it made sense in a manner that is like, wow, wish I read this 15, 20, 30 years ago, 40 years ago, 50 years ago, because it would have changed everything for me in attempting to do this, because I've heard it from multiple people that meditation is really good. Meditate, meditate, meditate. But I have spent so many years, and we talked about this at the beginning of our podcast, about emptying my mind, because I'm thinking that's the goal. I need to empty my mind. And I'm thinking, my goodness, I'm a type A personality. My mind is always busy.
Yeah.
There is never a time when my mind is blank. And to recognize that that's not, and you said this earlier, Kristen, that, have some forgiveness to yourself. And it's not about that. It's actually about just bringing yourself back. And so I wanted to point that out from somebody that isn't experienced the way that you are in meditating, that that's exactly, I think, who it's tailored to, is individuals like myself who aren't successfully meditating or don't see the value in it or the benefit in it quite yet, because they've either been trying and they don't see the benefit because they haven't been doing it correctly, or they punish themselves because they think, I'm just not a good meditator. Maybe I'm not enlightened. Maybe it's whatever. Right.
So you said something, not doing correctly. There's no wrong way to meditate. And you're giving me too much credit, because I don't consider myself a seasoned meditator, but I do know what works for me. Right. So I've taken, you've two read the Miracle Morning book. I've taken kind of different components. I kind of do a spiritual Reiki meets affirmation meets mindful meditation that I go through. And it's just knowing what works for you. But like you said, if you don't have a blueprint and you've never been with your own thoughts before, this is a great place to start. And then you can modify to serve the purpose that best serves you.
Yeah.
Did you guys read the book? Hold on a second. Did you guys read the book, The Code of the Extraordinary Mind by Vishen Lakhiani, who is the creator of Mind Valley?
No.
Oh, okay.
Is that our next book?
It's on the list. It's a very, very good book. It's been a couple of years since I read it, but the way he discovers why meditation, like if you do a search now and the search says 6-phase meditation, And it's 6 phases. And the phases were designed off of all these different aspects of the things that he's learned. So it pieces it together very much. That's what brought it up is how she's pieced things together that she knows that works. And that's kind of what he did. The 6 phase guided meditation is pretty fascinating. Just to throw that in there with this. So sometimes what I do is I've created a playlist called the Miracle Morning. When we started that book, I created a playlist and I add things to that playlist that I want in my morning. Now, that list, I need to clean that list up. But right now, what I've done,
it's more like a miracle
because you can,
yeah.
So you can organize the list in order, right?
Right.
So when you start playing the first one, which is kind of the one that I use to wake me up a little bit, and that's typically like an Abraham Hicks. It's like either a motivational, like get my mind waking up, and then it jumps into right now. I think my second one is, I found a woman. I have shared it. I asked Tracy. I don't know. I know I've shared it with Tracy, but another woman, not Amishi Jha, did a 12-minute find your flashlight. And I like hers. And so I add that. And so it drops into that and I'm ready for it. And then it drops in. Sometimes I change the next one, which is probably another 10 or 15-minute one. And so I just kind of tell you guys that because I think it's cool to figure out what's yours and to know that you can alter it. And by the way, by creating a playlist, you don't have to play the next one. And you can move it around because it just drops into that.
For a person who doesn't have time to meditate, it sounds like you spend a lot of time meditating.
The Miracle Morning has changed my life.
That is meditating. That is meditating. You don't have to be singing Kumbaya, burning incense, doing goodness knows what. It's just sitting there for a second and reflecting.
Yep. That's why I told my son, he's going to be 25 and he's just changed careers and he's going to commercial airline pilot school. And he's like, Mom, what am I going to do for my brain? And I'm like, nutritionally and read this book.
It's literally, that's what she did.
Get him young because I'm with someone who's actually a commercial pilot and he's under a lot of stress and he is not one to subscribe to the meditation school of thought. And I bet I try to introduce it whatever way I can. And I tell him just a little meditation.
12 minutes.
He's like, I can't meditate
5 times a day.
He's going to kill me for saying this, but my favorite thing that he said was, I'm too stressed to meditate. When I'm at a better mindset, I'll meditate. And I was looking at him going like, wait, what?
That's probably a common thing.
Right.
Yeah.
Right. It's
I need to I am trying to stay on my son because when I do talk to him, I'm like, listen, you really got to read this book. And I'll tell him a part of it. And he's like, oh, I really need to read that book.
Also the ability to pay attention. Tracy, you know the impact of this because you shared with me when you were an engineer, you required a lot of hyper focus and something very delicate, very important. You need to train that. You need to be able to have the capacity to keep that focus, and people just kind of wake up and think that they're just going to decide to do it, and that's not how it works, as we've learned in Peak Mind.
Exactly.
Yeah.
Now, Deanna, I'm curious because you have been on this journey of self-development since you started becoming a trader. Out of all of the books that you could have suggested to us, why did you choose this one? What was the one thing that said, hey, you guys need to read this book?
I remember the episode where you shared that you had a hard time with meditating. And I thought this is perfect. And also for tying in the trading component, having the discipline. So attention and cognitive resilience, emotional fortitude translates into discipline. When you are responsible for your own accountability in trading, so you set your rules, but you have no other mechanism other than your own discipline to enforce those rules. Being able to maintain that attention, to step outside of yourself and drop the stories, the emotional reactions to what you're seeing in the chart, requires so much. And this book, I think, helps you get there, to have that discipline, to have the accountability for trading.
100%. You just need people to buy into it to begin with so that they can actually develop the skill. It's interesting because we talked about this at the beginning of the episode, but multitasking was one of the first things that got debunked in this book, along with a bunch of other myths that I've always attributed myself to be a great multitasker. No, it's not a good thing. And I recognize now that, and I'm actually really noticing as I get older, the harder it is for me to actually multitask. So I've had conversations with traders because that is one of the things that I think is a big issue for a lot of new traders that are struggling because they are looking at multiple different systems. They're looking at every different strategy. They're looking at every different stock. They're being distracted. They're multitasking all the time through their trading and wondering why they can't gain perspective and gain profitability and consistency. And so now it's like, hey, you know what? When you ask me how many stocks I should be trading, or should I just trade one stock, or, whatever, right? My answer is going to be keep it simple. One strategy, one stock, focus on that, get good at it, and develop that skill slowly and move forward that way, because all of those other things, that's just multitasking. And I use a car analogy all the time. Is learning to drive a car requires multitasking. There's different things you're doing with your feet, your hands, your eyes, your brain. There's everything that's working at once. And when we were younger, learning to drive, we were very cognizant of where the brake was, where the gas was, where the signal is, where the mirrors are, who's on our left side, who's on our right side, paying attention. When you go to look at the right, then maybe, some people, their steering wheel turns to the right as well because they haven't quite coordinated the ability to look and hold straight at the same time. So there's different skill sets that develop over time. And now, as a driver of, 30 some years I've been driving now, I can get from point A to point B, and sometimes I forget how I got there. It's just, It's just so automatic now, but it wouldn't have been, I would not have been there 30 years ago. I wouldn't have been where I am right now 30 years ago if I had just been put into an indie track or put into one of the busiest cities I've ever driven in and said, here you go, just drive, right? And that's just, it's multitasking. It's not a good thing. So it definitely applies to the trading. And I wanted to say that because I've used it with some of my students already on multiple occasions. I've told them, I haven't told them to read this book per se. They're going to get that when they listen to this podcast, but I have told them that keep it simple, the multitasking, because I've cleared that whole multitasking thing out of my vocabulary now. It's not something that I do. So thank you for that.
As a result of this book, I also set better boundaries around my trading time, where I have my routine. I nap for 20 minutes. I meditate for 15 minutes. I give myself 15 minutes before the market open. But I've told the people in my life, hey, in this window of time, my phone is do not disturb. I don't want to hear it. It may look like I'm doing nothing, but I'm sitting there with my own thoughts. I'm getting myself ready. I don't check emails because maybe, the plumber got back to you with a bid that was higher than what you wanted to pay. So then you're frustrated. So I've set better boundaries in order to be able to have that attention be pure.
And again, the only way that you could do that is to even have the self-awareness to be able to recognize that those things affect you in a negative way. Yeah. I see it when my kid's home from school, not like either during summer holidays or on spring break or on a day off in Canada, because I trade the US stock market. So the US stock market's open, but here everybody's home and it's closed. I find that the boundaries have to be there. Otherwise I can get snappy. It's like, okay, you're bothering me like right now. And if you bother me right in the middle of a crucial decision, I'm not going to be your friend. Yeah. So I recognize that. So I have to choose to either have control over those emotions so that I don't react that way, because that's not the way that I want to be treating my husband or my son. Or I need to set up other boundaries, clearly communicate so they know not to disturb me, or don't trade. Correct. Right. And that takes self-awareness. So good on you for even recognizing that it's a negative, because a lot of people don't. They do not see that they're emotionally compromised while they're trading. And until they start tracking that, or until they develop that self-awareness, they don't see what it costs them. How many R's is it costing you? How many dollars is it costing you every single month by trading compromised or trading in a way where your boundaries are not set? Yeah, for sure.
Yep. Mindset books. It's the way to go, for sure.
100%.
Tracy.
And this should be in the top 5. I mean, it's new.
Yeah.
It's new, but it should stay around.
There's so many,
it's a new book.
There's so many good interviews with her too. If someone wants to kind of dip their toe before committing the full book, which is what I did, I got introduced to her on a different podcast. But Tracy, you're the queen of this, of an emotional check before trading. But she does highlight that there are 3 things that degrade attention, and that is stress, poor mood, and threat, right? And as you sit down in front of the computer when you trade, you're stressed. If you lose money, you're going to be in a bad mood, and you're always threatened because, you know, it's a battle between, are you going to take my money or am I going to take your money? Because that's essentially how the bid auction for stocks works. So
that's right.
Until you get to a level where you can detach yourself from the value of money. If you can get to that level where you're not thinking in dollars, when you're not thinking that that's what it is, you just think of it as, okay, well, this is just the cost of doing business. I either just attribute it to a learning R or I attribute it to an accumulation R. One of those 2 things just happened. Yeah. So cool. It's a benefit. It's all a perspective, and you don't get there until you've done the work. You don't get there until you've taken the time to evaluate and really define what your why is, who you are, know your relationship with money, all that type of thing. So you got to do the work, and that's the only way you can get to that level. And this is part of doing the work, as far as I'm concerned, because wow. I mean, even the whole missing 50% and not focusing, can you imagine what would happen if we missed 50% of the signals? We do. No, but
we are
just in trading, but 50% of the signals, the information, 50% of the information that we're looking at for a chart when we're trading, if we were missing 50% of that chart information on let's say a strategy that only gets 50% accuracy, can you imagine how that could drop you down to, a 25% success rate? Terrible, because you're missing.
Right. Yeah. I was back trading just the other day, and I was looking at this trade that I took, and I was thinking, I spent 10 minutes reading over my notes, trying to figure out why it was that I thought it was a good idea to take that trade. So
it's like the gorilla in the back, in the back of the room that goes by in the video. She talks about there was no gorilla. I don't believe you. What are you talking about?
Did you watch the video? Did you? Because
no.
It's on YouTube. Yeah, it's on YouTube.
Oh well, so now I'm looking for a gorilla.
Yeah, that experiment is on YouTube, and it's that's the one where you have people that are in white shirts, people in black shirts, and you are tossing a basketball, and your job is to count the number of times the basketball gets passed. So that's your job. And then you're asked questions at the end. But anyway, it is on YouTube if you guys wanted to check it out. But now that you know what you're looking for, it's tainted, right? But that's neither here nor there, but it is available for you to look at, and it's old. It's a very old video. So, but Deanna, what's next for you? Are you reading anything currently?
I just finished a spiritual related book that I don't know if I want to talk about here because it's something that I'm exploring with. It's called Core Light.
Yeah.
And now I actually need to choose the next one, which I think is going to be Becoming Supernatural by Joe Dispenza.
Supernatural Dispenza.
Yeah, I was listening.
Nice.
I was listening to a podcast interview with him, and he's talking about the science behind if bad stressful thoughts can make you sick, then why can't good positive thoughts make you healthy? I was going to get the audiobook, but then I didn't like the voice of who's reading it. This man has a weird British accent that I just can't follow well. So it needs to be a sitting down read book, especially because I think it's heavy on the science. So I'd like a chance to sit down and kind of devour that.
Yeah, that's on our list to read. I love Joe Dispenza. Yeah. Love. Kristen introduced me to him a while ago. Oh yeah. And it was just like, I think I texted you as soon as I watched the first video going, oh my goodness, this is so incredible.
Yeah.
This is life-changing.
Makes sense.
Yeah, there's so much going on.
It was very, very good.
Yeah, that science evolves, and these things that we used to kind of look down upon because we don't understand what, people call the divinity, energy, God, chi. We're learning to we can perhaps manipulate that to the benefit of society. So I'm excited.
Yep. His backstory is really cool.
Oh yeah. Peak Minds changed my understanding. It was the eureka moment for meditation, and Joe Dispenza was my eureka moment for affirmations, because in the video that I watched with him, they actually showed the brain and the neurons actually making new connections. And I needed to see that, because to visualize the science behind it and visualize what's physically happening when you're doing those affirmations, when you're changing your thoughts, when you're doing all that kind of stuff, that clicked. That made sense. I understand that. That makes it all good. When you don't understand things, it's really hard to go, this is just foo-foo.
Yeah.
So,
Woo-woo.
yeah, let's throw that out with the garbage, right? Because it doesn't make any sense to me. I need to have the end goal in mind. I need to have the understanding in place in order for me to buy in. And I'm sure other people are like that. There's others that aren't, others that are just willing to try whatever, for whatever reason. And if it's successful, great. If it's not, then so be it. They chalk it up to an experience. But there's others that require that level and depth of understanding so succinctly. So anyway, I appreciate your time so much. Super glad that you were able to join us today. And Kristen, did you have any last minute words or?
Well, no, I'm super thankful. Really, really appreciative that you just kind of stepped into that. I think I'm going to share that with them. Thank you for that. Also,
Yes.
I would like to self-invite Tracy and I. I'm the traveler, and so I would be dragging Tracy overseas with me to Italy, which is my bucket list country.
Let's
Tracy,
go.
you in on that? This is pressure. I'm going to
Peer pressure.
recording.
That's great.
Just say yes.
Just say yes.
Anyways.
Yeah.
Well, I appreciate the both
That'll
of
be
you.
fun.
You've been in my ear. It's strange when I touch base with Tracy, because I tell her, you were just in my ear. I think you two have the perfect balance of energy, and I thoroughly enjoy everything that you put out. So
Thank you.
Thank you.
Awesome.
And for all of our other listeners, I just wanted to give you a quick little thought. We are going to be taking a small little break while we refocus, recenter ourselves, and kind of reinvent what we're doing here. So this will be the last episode for a little bit, and we will be back at you very, very soon. So hang in there and keep sending us messages, keep hitting those likes, keep sharing our videos and getting the message out, because that's why we do this, is to help you, help yourself, and grow together. So
Thank you for joining us today. For more information about the show, as well as our list of current reads, check us out at www.theelevatedtrader.com.
Remember to subscribe and share if you found value in today's episode. See you next week.